I'm Russ Kinsler. I'm the Missouri River System Supervisor for the North Dakota Game and Fish Department, working on Lake Sakakawea and the Missouri River. Okay, the numbers of walleye in Lake Sakakawea have come up in the last 2 years. So our 2022 level is higher than it was the last 2 years, but it is not at the level it was between 2016 and 2019. Those were our record level years, but we're at high level of walleyes in Lake Sakakawea. I mean, compared to the long-term average, there are lots of walleyes out there for anglers to catch. The bulk of those fish are 15 to 20 inch walleyes, so it's the size fish that anglers are looking for to take home and put on the table. But there is also a good number of 20 plus inch size fish out there, and even up into that trophy level. Population is actually pretty well balanced. We have the eater size fish, we have trophy size fish, and we have a couple year classes of smaller fish coming up to replace those fish as they get harvested out. The main forage for walleyes in Lake Sakakawea is rainbow smelt. The rainbow smelt had another successful spawn last year. Rainbow smelt aren't a real long-lived fish, so we need to have spawns periodically or we lose the bulk of that population. So right now, things are looking good for smelt. Last year, we also had a really good white bass spawn, and that's an alternative forage to walleyes, especially in that first year of growth. So last fall, there was lots of young white bass also for walleyes to feed on. So our walleyes are looking really good. Their weight, their condition is looking really good right now. And the future of walleyes in Lake Sakakawea is good. Lake Sakakawea does have natural reproduction in it. It occurs mainly in the upper end of the lake, say from Van Hook up. The lower end, we rarely ever see any natural reproduction. So we do stock Lake Sakakawea, and sometimes we stock the entire lake. More often we concentrate on the lower end because there isn't that natural reproduction. But the last few years we've been stocking about 2 million walleyes a year. Last year we targeted kind of the whole lake. This year we're planning to stock 2 million walleyes again. It will probably be more concentrated on the lower third of the lake. So our test netting that we do every year, along with the tagging study that we're currently doing, has showed us that we currently don't need any additional regulations for walleyes. The walleyes aren't being over-harvested right now. Got good recruitment, a good size structure. So right now, nothing is telling us that we need additional regulations to maintain that fishery. I would expect fishing to be really good on Lake Sakakawea this year. There's no indications why it shouldn't be. The one thing with the lower lake level coming into this spring is there might be some difficulty with access right away at first ice off. Our crews, along with our partners out there, are going to be working to get those ramps ready as soon as we can. But there are a lot of ramps, and there's some work to be done. But access should be good, especially a couple weeks after ice off. We get things tidied up and silt removed and stuff like that. So.
I'm Paul Bailey, South Central District Fisheries Supervisor with the North Dakota Game and Fish Department, and one of my areas of responsibility is managing the Missouri River and Lake Oahe fishery. Fish species in the Missouri River, Lake Oahe that anglers are interested in would be our walleye. And there's a lot going on with our walleye population right now. Abundance is pretty good right now. It's on par with kind of our historic averages. But our size structure is what I think anglers is going to leave anglers a little bit wanting out there right now. Our size structure is definitely poorer than what we're accustomed to. For example, in the Missouri River between Lake Oahe and Garrison Dam, currently we only have about 10% of our walleye that we sample in this fish population that are 15 inches and larger. And in Lake Oahe itself, that number stands at about 25% of the walleye that we sample in there that are 15 inches and larger. So anglers have been accustomed to a much better size structure than that, and there's a few reasons for that. One is we've had really good natural reproduction in the last few years. Actually, 9 of the last 10 years, we've had walleye reproductive success that I would say ranges from good to excellent. And this is a fishery where we're relying completely on natural reproduction to sustain this walleye population. So Typically, good reproduction is something we're pretty excited about from our agency standpoint and as a fisherman myself. But in this case, we've really had too much of a good thing, that we've had reproductive success that has been too good for what the forage base of the Missouri River and Lake Oahe can realistically support. So some consequences of that is that our walleye population is in a little bit poorer health. A lot of our, especially smaller fish, are a bit skinnier than we like to see them, and that's translated to poorer growth. Typically in North Dakota, we see our walleye reaching 15 inches at about 3 years of age. But in the Missouri River and Lake Oahe right now, due to those poor forage conditions, our walleye aren't reaching 15 inches till age 5 or 6 right now for the most part. We do not stock walleye in the Missouri River Lake Oahe fishery, and we haven't done so since 1981. So what we have out there is the result of natural reproduction. We consistently assess the need for different regulations on this fishery, some things that anglers are maybe be familiar with from other fisheries, maybe in other states too, as far as minimum length limits or slot length limits or one over type length limits. And we annually assess those things through our annual standard sampling surveys, as well as some of the creel surveys we conduct on the Missouri River and Lake Oahe. Every 3 years we conduct one of those creel surveys. And we don't have any evidence from any of the sampling that we're doing or our creel surveys to say that a different regulation is needed to improve the quality of this fish population right now. Access right away this spring on the Missouri River and Lake Oahe, it always has the potential to be a little tricky with some sediment on boat ramps and potentially starting out with some low water levels on Lake Oahe. But as the summer progresses, access should be great on the Missouri River and Lake Oahe. Anglers should have good opportunity to catch numbers of fish in the Missouri River and Lake Oahe right now. The size structure is not where we'd like to be. It's going to be dominated by smaller fish. But one of the neat things about the Missouri River Lake Oahe fisheries, there's always the outside chance of catching a whopper.
My name is Todd Kaspers, and I work as a fisheries biologist, and I manage Devil's Lake. Walleye numbers in 2023 should be really good, actually. Our test nets in 2022 showed that we had an average catch per net of 35 walleyes compared to the long-term average of about 22. So walleye numbers should be really strong right now overall. And the size structure of the walleye population looks pretty good right now too. We have above average numbers of those kind of smaller fish, less than say 15 inches. And then actually really good numbers, those kind of 15 to 20 inch size keeper fish. We had an average of about 12 of those per net in 2022 in our test netting compared to a long-term average of about 6. So the numbers of those kind of 15 to 20 inch size fish are looking really good right now too. And the larger size fish, say 20 inch plus size fish, they're about average compared to normal. So still decent numbers of larger size walleye. Devil's Lake is actually a lake that walleye tend to reproduce pretty well in most years, but not every year. So we do some stocking to kind of help the walleye population out at times. The numbers we stock are pretty variable, just depending on the goal that we want to achieve with a given stocking. In a year when we think the walleye population needs more help, we might stock upwards of 1.5 million small fingerlings in a year like that. A lot of years we only stock kind of the eastern part of the lake with, I'll say, a few 100,000 fingerlings, just because the salinity or saltiness of the eastern part of the lake is a little bit high at times, and that impacts walleye egg survival. And in 2023, it's going to be one of those years when we just kind of want to help out the walleye population in the far eastern part of the lake, so we'll only be stocking, a few 100,000 walleye in the eastern part of the lake. We don't believe any, additional regulations will be effective. You need to have certain criteria to be met for a regulation to be effective. And if you don't have the right criteria, sometimes a regulation is just a feel-good regulation at best, and at worst, it can actually harm the fish population. So we don't want to put on any regulations that aren't going to be effective. One example from our Devil's Lake walleye population is that the mortality rate or the death rate of the walleye population usually comes in at an estimate of, say, 40% or less per year. I mean, that can sound like a lot, like 40% of our walleye are dying every year, but that's actually on the low end of what's considered normal for walleye populations. A mortality rate of, say, 40 to 55% is actually considered to be normal. So Devil's Lake comes in on kind of the low end of that. So it looks like the Devil's Lake walleye population is handling the fishing pressure and natural sources of death or mortality pretty well. So we don't think it needs any additional regulations. Devil's Lake in 2023, I think it'll be a good summer for walleye fishing. The numbers of fish are there right now, as well as good numbers of keeper size type walleye that anglers should be interested in. And water levels right now should be conducive to good access conditions on most of our boat ramps, so it should be a good summer.